Marcus Thompson sat tall in his leather saddle, the morning sun casting long shadows across his vast ranch. The silver spurs on his custom-made boots caught the light as his horse. Thunder trotted along the fence line of his property. Everything he could see belonged to him, thousands of acres of prime Texas land, hundreds of head of cattle, and a mansion that stood like a castle on the hill. At 32, Marcus was one of the wealthiest ranchers in the state, but his heart felt as empty as the vast plains surrounding him. The ranch had been in the Thompson family for 4 generations. Marcus had built upon that legacy with ruthless business sense. He owned cattle operations in 3 states, a chain of Western wear stores, and had investments in oil wells that pumped money into his accounts daily. His closet was filled with hand-tailored suits for business meetings in Dallas, but he felt most comfortable in his worn jeans and cowboy hat, riding across the land that defined him. Despite his wealth, Marcus lived a solitary life. His parents had passed away 5 years earlier in a car accident, leaving him to run the empire they had built together. He had trusted few people since then, keeping his circle small and his emotions guarded. The ranch hands respected him, but maintained their distance, seeing him as the boss first and a person second. Women came and went, drawn to his money and status rather than the man beneath the cowboy hat. On this particular Tuesday morning, Marcus was riding toward the town of Cedar Creek for his monthly supply run. The small town sat at the edge of his property, a place where simple folks lived simple lives. As his truck pulled up to Henderson's general store, he noticed the usual collection of weathered faces and curious stares. The people of Cedar Creek knew who he was, and while they were polite, there was always an invisible wall between him and them. The general store smelled of coffee and old wood, familiar scents that reminded Marcus of simpler times when his grandfather would bring him here as a child. Mrs. Henderson, the store owner, greeted him with the same reserved politeness she had shown for years. As he gathered his supplies, coffee, canned goods, and various ranch necessities, he could hear the whispered conversations that always seemed to follow him. Outside the store, Marcus loaded his purchases into his truck, the same routine he had followed for years. The town square was quiet except for a few children playing near the old fountain and some elderly men sitting on benches, discussing weather and local gossip. It was the kind of peaceful scene that should have brought him comfort, but instead, it reminded him of how disconnected he felt from everything around him. As he closed the tailgate of his truck, Marcus noticed movement near the alley behind the store. A small figure darted between the shadows, and for a moment he thought it might be a stray animal. But then he saw her, a little girl, probably no more than 8 years old, digging through the dumpster behind the general store. Her clothes were too big for her tiny frame, patched and faded from too many washes. Her dark hair hung in tangles around her face, and even from a distance, Marcus could see how thin she was. Something stirred in his chest as he watched her carefully examine each item she pulled from the garbage. Looking for anything useful or edible, she moved with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done this many times before. When she found a half-eaten apple, she wiped it carefully on her shirt and took a small bite, savoring it as if it were the finest meal Marcus found, himself walking toward the alley without really deciding to do so. His boots made soft sounds on the gravel, but the girl was so focused on her search that she didn't notice him approaching. When he was about 10 feet away, he cleared his throat gently, not wanting to startle her. The girl spun around, her eyes wide with fear and surprise. She clutched a small paper bag to her chest, probably containing whatever treasures she had found in her search. For a moment, they stared at each other across the narrow alley. The wealthy rancher and the poor child, 2 worlds colliding in the most unexpected way. "Hello there," Marcus said softly, crouching down to make himself less intimidating. "Marcus, what's your name?" The girl took a step backward, clearly ready to run if necessary. Her eyes darted between Marcus and the mouth of the alley, calculating her escape route. But something in his gentle tone must have reached her, because she didn't flee. "Luna," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "That's a beautiful name," Marcus replied, meaning it. "Luna, like the moon. Are you hungry, Luna?" The question seemed to catch her off guard. She glanced down at the paper bag in her arms, then back at Marcus, as if trying to decide whether to trust him. Her stomach answered for her with a loud rumble that echoed off the alley walls. Marcus's heart broke a little at the sound. Without thinking, he reached into his wallet and pulled out a $20 bill. "Would you like to get something to eat? Something fresh and warm?" Luna stared at the money as if she had never seen anything like it before. Her eyes filled with tears, but she shook her head firmly. "I can't take your money, mister. Mama says we don't take charity from strangers," the pride in her voice, despite her obvious hunger and need, struck Marcus deeply. Here was a child who had nothing, yet she had been raised with dignity and self-respect. It was more than he could say for many of the wealthy people he dealt with in his business. "Your mama sounds like a wise woman," Marcus said, putting the money back in his wallet. "Where is she now?" Luna's expression grew sad, and she looked down at her worn shoes. "She's working. She cleans houses in the next town over. Takes the bus there early in the morning and doesn't come back until dark." The picture was becoming clearer to Marcus. Single mother, working long hours for little pay, trying to provide for her daughter. Luna was left to fend for herself during the day, scrounging for food and staying hidden from authorities who might ask uncomfortable questions about why a young child was wandering around town alone. As Marcus looked at this brave little girl, something began to shift inside him. The walls he had built around his heart started to crack, and for the first time in years, he felt truly connected to another human being. Marcus couldn't get Luna out of his mind as he drove back to the ranch that afternoon. The image of her tiny hands carefully wiping that discarded apple haunted him, along with the dignity in her voice when she refused his money. He had grown up with every advantage money could buy, yet this 8-year-old child possessed something he had lost along the way: genuine pride and strength of character. That evening, instead of eating his usual solitary dinner in the grand dining room of his mansion, Marcus found himself sitting on the front porch, staring toward the town lights in the distance. His housekeeper, Maria, had worked for the family for 20 years and was one of the few people who dared to speak freely with him. "You seem troubled tonight, Senator Marcus," she said as she brought him a cup of coffee. "Something happened in town?" Marcus had never shared personal matters with Maria before, but something about the day had changed him. "I met a little girl. Today, Luna, she was going through garbage looking for food." Maria's expression softened with understanding. "Ah, you met little Luna Reyes. Her mother Carmen sometimes comes to town looking for work. Good woman, but life has been very hard." "For them? You know them?" asked, surprised. "Carmen used to work for the Hendersons at the store, but they had to let her go when business got slow. Now she takes the bus to Austin every day, cleaning office buildings at night. She leaves Luna with old Mrs. Santos sometimes, but mostly, the child is alone." Maria shook her head sadly. "It breaks my heart, but Carmen is too proud to accept help from the church or anyone else." Marcus set down his coffee cup, his mind racing. "Where do they live?" "In the old trailer park on the south side of town. Carmen rents a small trailer from Mr. Pete. It's not much, but it's all she can afford." Maria studied Marcus's face carefully. "Why do you ask?" Before Marcus could answer, his phone rang. It was his business manager calling about a potential land deal that could bring in millions. As he took the call and discussed profit margins and investment strategies, his thoughts kept drifting back to Luna. Here he was talking about money that meant nothing to him, while a child went hungry just a few miles away. The next morning, found himself driving into town again, this time with a plan. He stopped at Henderson's general store and bought several bags of groceries: bread, milk, fresh fruit, canned goods, and other essentials. Mrs. Henderson raised an eyebrow at his unusual purchases. "Planning a big barbecue, Mr. Thompson?" she asked. "Something like that," Marcus replied, not wanting to explain his true intentions. As he loaded the groceries into his truck, Marcus felt nervous in a way he hadn't experienced since his first business deal. He drove toward the trailer park, following Maria's directions, and found himself in a part of town he had never visited before. The Shady Oak Trailer Park was a collection of aging mobile homes, scattered across a dusty lot. Some were well-maintained with small gardens and decorative touches, while others looked ready to collapse. Marcus found the address Maria had given him, a small, faded blue trailer with a broken porch step and windows covered with mismatched curtains. He sat in his truck for several minutes, suddenly unsure of himself. What was he doing here? What right did he have to interfere in these people's lives? But then he thought of Luna's thin face and hollow eyes, and he knew he had to try. Marcus knocked gently on the door, holding one bag of groceries. After a moment, the door cracked open and Luna's face appeared in the gap. Her eyes widened when she saw him. "Mr. Marcus?" she whispered. "What are you doing here?" "I brought you something," he said, holding up the bag. "Some food for you and your mama." Luna's expression immediately became guarded. "I told you yesterday we don't take charity." "This isn't charity," Marcus said quickly, thinking fast. "I was wondering if maybe you could help me with something. I have all this food and I can't eat it all myself. It would just go bad if someone doesn't use it. Would you be doing me a favor by taking it off my hands?" Luna stared at him suspiciously, clearly trying to decide if he was telling the truth or just being clever with words. Finally, she opened the door wider and stepped aside. The inside of the trailer was clean but sparse. The furniture was old and worn, but everything was neat and organized. Luna had obviously been doing her best to keep the place tidy while her mother was at work. On the small table, Marcus noticed a few school books and a half-finished drawing. "Of a horse? You like horses?" Marcus asked, picking up the drawing. Luna nodded shyly. "Yeah, I've never seen one up close, but I think they're beautiful. I draw them from pictures in library books." Marcus felt his heart tighten. Here was a child who loved horses, living just miles from one of the largest horse ranches in the state, yet she had never seen one in person. He made a mental note as he began unpacking the groceries. "This is too much," Luna protested, as Marcus filled their small refrigerator and cabinets. "Mama will be upset if she thinks we took charity. Remember, this is just helping me out," Marcus reminded her gently. "I bought too much at the store." "What time does your mama get home?" "Not until after 8 o'clock, Luna said. "She takes 2 buses to get to Austin, works all night cleaning buildings, then takes 2 buses back. She's usually really tired when she gets home." Marcus glanced at his watch. It was only 2 in the afternoon. "What do you do all day?" Luna shrugged. "I go to school when it's in session. During summer, I read library books, draw pictures, or walk around town. Sometimes I help Mrs. Santos with her garden, and she gives me lunch." The picture of Luna's daily life painted itself in Marcus's mind. Hours of solitude. Scrounging for meals, entertaining herself with whatever she could find. It was a childhood no child should have to endure, yet Luna seemed to accept it with remarkable maturity. "Would you like to see some real horses?" Marcus asked impulsively. Luna's face lit up like a Christmas tree. "Real ones? Where?" "At my ranch, I have dozens of them. Would you like to visit sometime?" For a moment, Luna's excitement was pure and unguarded. Then her expression became cautious again. "I would have to ask Mama first. And I can't accept any more favors from you." Marcus smiled at her stubborn pride. "What if I said I could use some help at the ranch? Maybe someone to help. Feed the horses or clean the stables. It would be work, and I would pay fair wages." Luna considered this carefully. "How much work? How much money?" Well, Marcus said, pretending to think it over seriously. "Feeding horses is important work. I'd say it's worth at least $10 a day. What do you think?" $10 was probably more than Luna had ever seen at one time. Her eyes grew wide, but she maintained her composure. "I would have to discuss it with Mama. But if she says yes, I promise I would work very hard." As Marcus prepared to leave, Luna suddenly stepped forward and wrapped her thin arms around his waist in a spontaneous hug. The gesture caught him completely off guard, and for a moment he stood frozen, unsure how to respond. Then, slowly, he placed his hands gently on her shoulders. "Thank you for the food, Mr. Marcus," Luna whispered against his shirt. "And for treating me like I'm important." Simple words hit Marcus like a physical blow. When was the last time anyone had thanked him for treating them with basic human dignity? When was the last time anyone had hugged him without wanting something in return? As Luna stepped back, Marcus felt tears threatening to form in his eyes. That unexpected hug from Luna changed something fundamental inside Marcus. As he drove back to his ranch, he found himself thinking about what it meant to treat someone like they were important. For years, he had measured his interactions with people based on business value or social status. Yet this 8-year-old girl had reminded him of something he had forgotten: the simple power of human connection. Marcus spent the rest of the afternoon in his office, but instead of reviewing financial reports, he found himself researching child welfare services, poverty statistics, and educational programs in the area. The numbers shocked him. Dozens of families in Cedar Creek and surrounding communities lived below the poverty line, struggling with basic needs like food and housing. When Maria called him for dinner, Marcus barely touched his meal. His mind was elsewhere, planning and calculating. Finally, Maria set down her dish rag and faced him directly. "Senator Marcus, you have been different since yesterday. This little girl, she has affected you greatly. No?" Marcus nodded slowly. "Hug Maria. When was the last time someone hugged me just because they wanted to? It's not because they wanted something from me. Not because it was expected, just because they felt grateful and happy." Maria's expression softened with understanding. "You have been alone too long, mijijo. Money and success are good things, but they cannot fill the empty places in the heart." The next morning, Marcus woke before dawn with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. He had made a decision during the night, one that would require careful planning and discretion. He drove into town early. Arriving at the trailer park just as the morning sun was painting the sky pink and gold, he knocked softly on Luna's door, not wanting to wake the neighbors. After a few moments, Carmen Reyes opened the door. Marcus had never met Luna's mother before, but he could see immediately where the child got her dignity and strength. Carmen was a small woman in her early 30s, with Luna's dark hair and intelligent eyes. Despite her obvious exhaustion from working all night, she stood straight and looked Marcus directly in the eye. Her clothes were clean but worn, and her hands showed the calluses of hard physical labor. "You must be Mr. Thompson," she said quietly. "Luna told me about your visit yesterday. I want to thank you for the food, but I also need to make something clear. We don't accept charity, no matter how kindly it's offered." Marcus had expected this response and had prepared for it. "Mrs. Reyes, I'm not here to offer charity. I'm here to offer your daughter a job." Carmen's eyebrows rose in surprise. "A job?" "She's 8 years old. I have a ranch with many animals," Marcus explained. "They need care and attention. Luna loves horses, and she's demonstrated that she's responsible and hardworking. I'd like to hire her to help with feeding and basic care during the summer. The work would be light, appropriate for her age, and I'd pay her fairly." Behind her, Mother Marcus could see Luna listening from the hallway, her eyes bright with interest. Carmen noticed too and gestured for her daughter to join them. "What exactly would she be doing?" Carmen asked, her tone cautious but not dismissive. Marcus had thought this through carefully. Feeding horses requires measuring out hay and grain, filling water buckets, and keeping the feeding areas clean. It's perfect work for someone Luna's age who wants to learn about animals. I'd also provide transportation to and from the ranch, and lunch while she's there. Carmen studied Marcus's face, clearly trying to read his true intentions. "And what would you pay for this work?" $15 a day, 3 days a week to start," Marcus replied. "If Luna does well and wants to continue, we could discuss expanding her responsibilities and her pay." Luna gasped softly at the amount. $45 a week was more money than she had ever imagined having. Carmen's expression remained carefully neutral, but Marcus could see the hope flickering in her eyes. "I would need to think about it," Carmen said finally. "And I would want to see this ranch myself before I let Luna work there." "Of course," Marcus agreed immediately. "Why don't I pick you both up on Saturday morning? You can tour the ranch, meet some of the animals, and see exactly what Luna would be doing. No commitment required." After some additional discussion, Carmen agreed to the Saturday visit. As Marcus drove away, he felt more excited than he had about anything in years. This wasn't just about helping Luna anymore. It was about finding a purpose beyond accumulating wealth. Saturday arrived bright and clear. Marcus picked up Luna and Carmen in his pickup truck. choosing the practical ranch vehicle over his luxury cars to avoid making them uncomfortable. Luna chattered excitedly during the drive, asking endless questions about the horses and cattle. Carmen remained quiet, but Marcus caught her looking around with interest as they drove through the gates of the Thompson Ranch. The property was impressive by any standards, rolling hills dotted with cattle, white painted fences stretching as far as the eye could see, buildings that spoke of prosperity and careful maintenance. When they reached the main house, Luna's eyes widened. In amazement, the mansion was beautiful, but not ostentatious, built in classic ranch style with stone and timber. Wide porches wrapped around the structure, offering views of the countryside in every direction. "This is where you live?" Luna asked in wonder. "Bigger than I need," Marcus admitted, realizing how true that was. "But it's been in my family for a long time." Their first stop was the main horse barn, a magnificent structure housing 20 stalls. As they walked down the central aisle, Luna was transfixed by the gentle giants looking over their stall doors. Marcus introduced her to Thunder, his personal riding horse, and then to Starlight, a gentle mare who immediately took to Luna. "She likes me," Luna exclaimed as Starlight nuzzled her shoulder. Marcus showed them the feed room, explaining how different horses had different dietary needs and how important it was to follow the feeding schedule exactly. He demonstrated the proper way to measure grain and hay, how to fill water buckets, and how to safely interact with the horses. Carmen watched everything carefully, asking practical questions about safety procedures and supervision. Marcus could see her slowly relaxing as she observed how gentle the horses were and how seriously he took the safety aspects of the job. After the horse barn, they visited the cattle operation, the equipment sheds, and finally returned to the house for lunch. Maria had prepared a feast of Mexican food, and Luna's eyes lit up when she saw the spread on the dining room table. "This is too much trouble," Carmen protested, but Maria waved away her concerns. "Nonsense. It's been too long since we've had guests in this house. Sit, eat, enjoy." During lunch, Marcus and Carmen talked more seriously about the job arrangement. He explained that Luna would work Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday mornings from 8 until noon. He would provide transportation both ways, lunch on workdays, and would ensure she was supervised by Jake, his head horse trainer, whenever Marcus wasn't available. "What about school in the fall?" Carmen asked. "The job can continue after school and on weekends if Luna wants it to," Marcus replied. "I believe in the value of work, but education comes first." As they prepared to leave, Luna ran back to Starlight's stall for one final goodbye. The mare seemed to sense the child's affection and nuzzled her gently through the bars. "Can I really come back and work here?" Luna asked, her voice full of hope. Carmen looked at Marcus one more time, searching his face. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her concerns, because she nodded slowly. "If you promise to work hard and listen to Mr. Thompson and his people, then yes, you can take the job." Luna's squeal of joy echoed through the barn, causing several horses to whinny in response.
"Ah!"
She threw her arms around her mother first, then impulsively hugged Marcus again. This time, Marcus was ready for the hug and returned it without hesitation. As he felt Luna's thin arms around his waist and heard her whispered thank you, Marcus realized that she wasn't the only one whose life was about to change. For the first time in years, he had something to look forward to beyond profit margins and business deals. Luna's first day of work arrived with the kind of golden summer morning that made Texas famous. Marcus picked her up at 7:30, finding her waiting outside the trailer, dressed in her best clothes and practically vibrating with excitement. She had braided her hair carefully and wore a pair of work gloves that looked several sizes too big for her small hands. "Good morning, Mr. Marcus," she called out as she climbed into the truck. "I've been awake since 5 o'clock. I was too excited to sleep." During the drive to the ranch, Luna peppered him with questions she had thought of since Saturday. How many horses did he have? What were all their names? Did they ever get sick? How fast could Thunder run? Marcus found himself laughing more during that 20-minute drive than he had in months. Jake Wheeler, the head horse trainer, was waiting for them at the barn. a weathered man in his 50s who had worked for the Thompson family for over 20 years. Jake had initially been skeptical about hiring a child. But when he met Luna, her genuine enthusiasm and respectful attitude won him over immediately. "So you're the young lady who's going to help us take care of these horses," Jake said, crouching down to Luna's eye level.
Oh.
"This is important work. Miss Luna, these animals depend on us to keep them healthy and happy. Think you're ready for that responsibility?" Luna nodded solemnly. "Yes, sir. I promise I'll do my best." Jake showed her how to read the feeding chart that listed each horse's specific dietary requirements. Some horses needed more grain because they were working harder. Others needed special supplements for joint health, and a few had allergies that required careful attention. Luna listened intently, asking clarifying questions and taking mental notes. Her first task was helping to feed the horses their morning hay. Jake demonstrated how to break apart the bales and distribute the proper amount to each stall. Luna threw herself into the work with determination, though the hay bales were almost as big as she was. When she struggled with a particularly stubborn bale, Marcus quietly stepped in to help without making her feel inadequate. "Teamwork," he said, simply. "Even experienced ranch hands help each other." As they moved from stall to stall, Luna began to learn each horse's personality. Starlight always greeted her with a gentle nicker, while Tornado, a spirited gelding, preferred to maintain his dignity and observe from a distance. Old Charlie, a retired ranch horse, was happy to let Luna pet his nose while he ate. "They're all so different," Luna observed, as she carefully measured grain for the next horse. "Just like people." "That's exactly right," Jake agreed. "Good horsemen learn to read each animal and understand what they need." "You're already showing that instinct." By the end of her first morning, Luna was tired but glowing with satisfaction. Her clothes were dusty, her hair had escaped its braid, and she smelled like hay and horses. She had never been happier in her life. "How did I do?" she asked anxiously. As Marcus prepared to drive her home. "You did wonderful," Marcus assured her. "Jake told me you're a natural around horses. Are you ready to come back on Thursday?" "Yes," Luna exclaimed. "Can I tell Mama about all the horses? Can I tell her about how Starlight remembered me and how Thunder let me brush his neck?" As the weeks passed, Luna settled into her routine at the ranch. Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday mornings became the highlights of her week. She learned to fill water buckets without spilling, to recognize when a horse might be feeling unwell, and to clean stalls efficiently. More importantly, she began to blossom under the positive attention and sense of purpose. Marcus found himself looking forward to Luna's workdays as much as she did. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and her questions helped him see his ranch through fresh eyes. When she asked why the fence posts were painted white, he realized he had never really thought about it. They just always had been. When she wondered if the horses got lonely at night, he found himself staying. Later in the evenings, to spend extra time with the animals, Carmen noticed the changes in her daughter immediately. Luna had always been a good child, but now she carried herself with new confidence. She talked constantly about the horses, drew pictures of them in her spare time, and began reading every book about horses she could find at the library. "She's different," Carmen told Marcus one Saturday when she came to pick up Luna. "Happier, more sure of herself. I don't know how to thank you for giving her this opportunity." "Luna is teaching me as much as I'm teaching her," Marcus replied. "Honestly, maybe more." One Thursday morning in late July, Luna arrived at the ranch to find Marcus waiting for her with a serious expression. For a moment, she worried that she had done something wrong, but his smile reassured her. "Luna, you've been doing such good work that Jake and I have been talking about giving you some additional responsibilities. Are you interested?" Luna nodded eagerly. "What kind of responsibilities?" "Well, Starlight has been getting a little pudgy from too many treats and not enough exercise. We think she needs a friend to help her get more active, someone to lead her around the paddock for gentle exercise. Think you might know someone who could handle that job?" Luna's eyes widened with understanding. "You mean me? You want me to exercise Starlight?" "Only if you think you're ready," Marcus said. "It would mean learning about proper safety procedures, understanding horse behavior, and taking on more responsibility. The pay would increase to $20 a day. Luna was quiet for a long moment, and Marcus could almost see her thinking through the implications. This wasn't just about money. It was about being trusted with something important. I would need to be very careful, she said finally. I would need to learn everything exactly right so I don't make any mistakes. That's exactly the right attitude, Marcus agreed. Jake will teach you everything you need to know, and you'll never be alone with Starlight until we're completely confident in your abilities. Over the following weeks, Luna threw herself into learning the new skills. She studied horse body language, practiced reading the subtle signals that indicated a horse's mood, and learned proper techniques for leading and handling. Jake was a patient teacher. Marcus often found himself watching their lessons with a sense of pride that surprised him. The first time, Luna successfully led Starlight around the paddock by herself, with Marcus and Jake watching from the fence. She was so excited she could barely contain herself. Starlight seemed to sense Luna's joy and pranced a little, showing off for her young handler. "Look at me," Luna called out. "I'm really doing it." Marcus felt his chest tighten with emotion as he watched the small girl and the gentle mare working. Together, Luna had found something she was truly good at, something that gave her confidence and purpose. But more than that, she had found a place where she belonged. That evening, as he sat on his porch watching the sunset, Marcus realized that Luna had given him something even more valuable than her help with the horses. She had reminded him what it felt like to be needed for who he was rather than what he owned. Her genuine affection and respect had nothing to do with his wealth and everything to do with how he treated her. For the first time in years, Marcus Thompson felt truly wealthy, not because of the money in his bank accounts, but because of the trust and friendship of one small girl who had seen past his fortune to the man underneath. As August drew to a close, Luna had become an integral part of the ranch routine. The horses knew her voice and responded to her gentle commands. Jake often commented that she had better instincts with animals than some ranch hands he had worked with 4 years. But it was Marcus who noticed the more subtle changes in the young girl. Luna's confidence had grown tremendously over the summer. She spoke up more during conversations, asked deeper questions about ranch management, even began making suggestions about improving certain procedures. Her thin frame had filled out slightly thanks to Maria's hearty lunches, and her eyes sparkled with the kind of happiness that comes from feeling valued and purposeful. One morning in early September, Luna arrived at the ranch looking troubled. She went through her usual routines with the horses, but Marcus could see that something was bothering her. Finally, as they sat together eating lunch on the porch, he decided to ask, "You seem a little quiet today, Luna. Everything all right, Luna?" Pushed her sandwich around on her plate before looking up at him. "Mr. Marcus, school starts next week." "That's exciting," Marcus said, though he sensed there was more to her concern. "You must be looking forward to seeing your friends and teachers again." "I am," Luna said slowly, "but I'm also worried. What if I can't work here anymore once school starts? What if there's no time? And what if—" She paused, her voice growing smaller. "What if you don't need me anymore?" Marcus set down his own lunch, understanding now what was really troubling her. Over the summer, Luna had found more than just a job at the ranch. She had found a place where she belonged, where she was valued and respected. The thought of losing that connection was frightening for a child who had experienced too much uncertainty. In her young life, Luna, Marcus said gently, "Do you remember when we first talked about this job? I told your mother that education comes first, always. But that doesn't mean you can't continue working here. We'll just adjust your schedule." Luna looked up hopefully. "Really? You'd still want me to work here? Want you to work here?" Marcus repeated. "Luna, Starlight has been looking for you every morning, even on days when you're not scheduled to come. Jake says the horses are calmer and happier when you're around. And honestly, this place feels different with you here. Better." The relief on Luna's face was immediate and profound. "So I can keep working with the horses, even during school?" "We'll work it out with your mother," Marcus promised. "Be weekends and some afternoons when you don't have too much homework. The horses and I aren't going anywhere." That Saturday, Carmen came to the ranch for another discussion with Marcus. Luna was busy with her horse duties, chattering away to Starlight about her upcoming return to school. Carmen and Marcus sat on the porch, watching the girl work with quiet satisfaction. "She's grown so much this summer," Carmen said softly. "It's not just physically, but in confidence and maturity. She talks about the horses constantly, but more than that, she talks about feeling important, feeling needed." Marcus nodded, understanding exactly what Carmen meant. "She's taught me a few things, too, about what really matters." Carmen. Winter arrived early that year, bringing with it a challenge that would test everything Luna and Marcus had built together. In mid-November, Carmen fell ill with pneumonia and was hospitalized for 2 weeks. With no family nearby and unable to afford extended care, Carmen faced the terrifying prospect of losing her cleaning job and falling behind on rent. Luna tried to hide her worry, but Marcus could see the strain on her young face. She threw herself into her ranch work with even more determination, as if keeping busy could somehow make everything else better. It was Jake who finally approached Marcus with a suggestion. "Boss," Jake said one Saturday morning as they watched Luna carefully grooming Starlight, "that little girl is carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. Her mom is sick, they're struggling financially, and she's trying to be brave about all of it." Marcus had been thinking the same thing. "What are you suggesting?" "Well, we've got that small cottage behind the main barn that's been sitting empty for 2 years. Used to be the foreman's house before we built the new bunkhouse. It's got 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, everything they'd need, and it's close enough that Luna could help with morning feedings before school." Marcus had been considering the same possibility, but hadn't known how to approach it without offending Carmen's pride. "You think Carmen would accept that kind of arrangement if you present it right?" Jake said. "Make it about Luna's work expanding, maybe needing someone on site to help with sick animals or emergencies. Carmen's practical. If she sees it as a job opportunity rather than charity, she might consider it." That afternoon, Marcus visited Carmen in the hospital. She looked small and fragile in the hospital bed, worried lines etched deep around her eyes. When he explained his proposal, her first reaction was predictable resistance. "Mr. Thompson, I appreciate the offer, but we can't accept that kind of help. It's too much." "Carmen," Marcus said gently, "let me ask you something. If Luna became a veterinarian someday, which I think she has the potential to do, wouldn't hands-on experience living on a working ranch be valuable for her education?" Carmen's expression shifted slightly. "You really think she could become a veterinarian? I've watched her with animals for months now. She has instincts that can't be taught, and a work ethic that's remarkable for someone her age," Jake thinks. "She's the most naturally gifted person with horses he's ever worked with, and he's been doing this for 30 years. Marcus leaned forward, his voice earnest. "This wouldn't be charity, Carmen. Luna would be taking on additional responsibilities. Helping with morning feedings, assisting with basic veterinary care, maybe even helping to train some of the younger horses. In exchange, you'd both have housing on the ranch and Luna would get invaluable experience. You could keep your cleaning job in Austin if you want. Or I might have other work opportunities on the ranch that would interest you." Carmen was quiet. For a long time, thinking it through, finally she asked what kind of other work. Maria isn't getting any younger, and the ranch house is large. She could use help with cooking and housekeeping. And I've been thinking about starting some kind of program for kids from town to learn about ranch work and animal care. Someone with your organizational skills and Luna's experience could help develop something like that. By the time Carmen was released from the hospital, she had agreed to a trial arrangement. They would live in the cottage for 6 months while she recovered her strength and Luna took on expanded ranch duties. If it worked well for everyone, they could discuss making it permanent. The cottage hadn't been used in 2 years, but Marcus had it thoroughly cleaned and furnished with simple, comfortable pieces. When Luna saw her new room with its window overlooking the horse pasture, her eyes filled with tears of joy. "I can see Starlight from my bedroom window," she whispered. "And Thunder, too. It's like a dream." Living on the ranch transformed Luna's relationship with the animals and her understanding of ranch operations. She was there for the morning feedings, helping Jake distribute hay and grain while the sun rose over the hills. She witnessed the birth of 2 foals that spring. Staying up all night with the expectant mares and learning about the delicate process of bringing new life into the world, Carmen found her place on the ranch as well. Her organizational skills and attention to detail made her invaluable in managing the ranch's administrative work. She helped Marcus develop a summer program for local children to learn about ranch life and animal care, creating something that benefited the entire community. But it was the small, daily moments that meant the most to Marcus. Luna running up to him after school to tell him about her day before changing into her ranch clothes. Carmen's quiet good morning over coffee before the day's work began. The sound of laughter echoing from the cottage in the evenings as mother and daughter cooked dinner together. One evening in late spring, Marcus was sitting on his porch when Luna approached, leading Starlight on a rope. The mare followed her trustingly, and they made a beautiful picture in the golden evening light. "Mr. Marcus," Luna said, her voice unusually formal, "I have something important to tell you." Marcus set down his coffee cup, giving her his full attention. "What is it, Luna?" "I know what I want to do when I grow up," she announced. "I want to be a large animal veterinarian, specializing in horses. And I want to have my own ranch someday, where I can teach other kids like me about working with animals." Marcus smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "That sounds like a wonderful plan. It'll take a lot of hard work and studying." "I know," Luna said seriously. "But you and Jake and Mama have taught me that anything worth having takes work. You've shown me that having money isn't as important as using whatever you have to help other people." She paused, then stepped forward and wrapped her arms around his waist in one of her spontaneous hugs. But this time, there was something different about it. Not just gratitude, but the deep affection of family. "Thank you for saving us," she whispered against his shirt. "Not just with money or jobs or the cottage, but for making us feel like we belong somewhere." Marcus returned the hug, feeling his own eyes fill with tears. "Luna, you and your mother didn't need saving. You just needed someone to recognize how strong and capable you already were. You've given me far more than I've given you." Summer arrived again. The ranch hosted its first annual youth animal care program. 15 children from Cedar Creek and surrounding communities spent a week learning about horses, cattle, and responsible animal husbandry. Luna, now 10 years old and confident in her abilities, served as a junior instructor alongside Jake. Marcus watched from the fence as Luna demonstrated proper horse grooming techniques to a group of wide-eyed 7-year-olds. Her patience and gentle authority reminded him of their first meeting in that alley behind Henderson's General Store. The frightened, hungry little girl who had refused charity was now a confident young person who understood her own worth and potential. That evening, as the program participants headed home with certificates of completion and heads full of new knowledge, Marcus realized that Luna's unexpected hug 2 years ago had indeed shocked everyone, most of all himself. It had shocked him out of his isolation and into a life filled with purpose and genuine connection. The wealthy cowboy had learned that true riches weren't measured in acres or bank balances, but in the trust of a child, the respect earned through kindness, and the family that forms when people choose to care for each other. Luna's hug hadn't just been a gesture of gratitude. It had been the key that unlocked the best parts of both their hearts. As the sun set over the Thompson Ranch, Marcus stood with his arm around Luna's shoulders, watching Carmen help the last of the program participants into their parents' cars. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but tonight, all was well in their corner of the world. The little girl who had once dug through garbage for food now had dreams as vast as the Texas sky. And the lonely cowboy who had once measured his worth in dollars now understood that his greatest legacy would be the lives he had touched and the love he had both given and received. Sometimes the most profound changes begin with the simplest gestures. Sometimes an unexpected hug from a stranger can transform lives forever. And sometimes, when we open our hearts to help others, we discover that we're the ones who have been saved.